Bible prophecy is active and unfolding daily. Zechariah 12, Isaiah 17, Psalm 83, Ezekiel 38. Here is what the LameStream Media is not telling you. Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's newscast. The Isaiah 17 prophecy continues to grow. From the Washington Post, President Obama's most senior national security advisors have recommended moving U.S. troops closer to the front lines in Iraq and Syria. Such changes would represent a significant escalation of the American role in Iraq and Syria, and last Friday, President Obama announced that he had ordered several dozen special operations troops into Syria to advise local Kurdish forces fighting ISIS. And, in addition, Obama authorized deploying A-10 and F-15 warplanes to the Incirlik Air Base in Turkey. From CNN, Iran is also increasing its military presence in Syria. Note, since 2013, Iran has lost 8 senior commanders in Syria, including at least 6 generals. Also, the number of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps casualties in Syria reached 29 in the past few weeks. From Asharq al-Awsat, UK, a surge in casualties is driving Hezbollah supporters and senior members to question the group's role in Syria. On Monday, October 26th, Hezbollah announced the deaths of 8 fighters in Syria. Hezbollah's dead in Syria have included dozens of high-ranking commanders. In fact, Hezbollah's losses in Syria exceeded their expectations, and its elite Al-Radwan battalion has been greatly exhausted to the extent of disintegration after the loss of its commanders and professional fighters in the Zabadani battle. Hezbollah's dead reached 1,263 at the end of last week, most of them from the elite forces, something which has greatly hit the group's morale. From Haaretz, an estimated 2,000 to 3,000 Iranians and other combatants sent from Iran and Iraq are fighting in Syria on behalf of the Assad regime. Iranian forces are under fire and are dying in battle in Syria, and this month alone, over a dozen members of the Quds Force of Iran's Revolutionary Guards were killed, including 8 officers. With only a few thousand Iranian combatants, even with the aid of Russian air cover, they will not be able to achieve a decisive military victory. Syria, Damascus, Isaiah 17. This thing is really growing in leaps and bounds. Russia has helped Iran deliver weapons into Syria twice a day over the past 10 days, according to Fox News. And those flights are in breach of 2 UN Security Council resolutions which impose an arms embargo on Iran. So much for these agreements. Also, a video released by the Syrian army shows Russian Blazing Sun missile launcher in action as it fired at ISIS positions in the mountains northeast of Latakia. Temperatures soar to 1,000 degrees Celsius at the epicenter of the explosion. That is 1,832 degrees Fahrenheit at the epicenter of the explosion. Can you imagine? burning up all the oxygen in the immediate area. Man, talk about a disgusting weapon. Further, the prophecy of Psalm 83 is becoming more prevalent. In a video posted on October 24th, Palestinian preacher Ali Abu Ahmad, speaking at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, said, quote, "Allah willing, the caliphate will be the one to liberate Jerusalem very soon, and it will annihilate the Jewish entity. O Allah, annihilate the Jews. O Allah, let us kill them. O Allah, make the ground swallow them up along with their homes. O Allah, bring the whip of torment cracking down upon them." Close quote. Have you ever heard any nation at war with anyone speak such demonic expressions? I'm telling you, it's really, it's really, the water is boiling in the pot. It's getting more active every week. Flash from News Tribe UK. It was reported by the Kuwaiti media outlet AWD News that Saudi Prince Al-Walid bin Talal said that he would side with Israel in case of a Palestinian uprising. Have you heard that? If you had, forget it. He has denied that report as, and I quote, completely bogus and untrue. So much for that one. And the prophecy of Revelation 11:9 is also burgeoning. From the Chicago Tribune, Israeli and Jordanian officials said on Tuesday that new surveillance cameras should be installed within days at the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. That means, by the end of this week, with the goal of streaming the footage live on the internet for maximum transparency. Talk about admirable and also smart. But here is the very tool that makes Revelation 11:9 concerning the two witnesses, Moses and Elijah, appearing on the streets of Jerusalem happen. Revelation 11:9 reads, "The peoples and tribes and languages and nations all look at their dead bodies," the two witnesses' dead bodies, "for 3.5 days." Now, how can all peoples, tribes, languages, and nations simultaneously watch an event happening in Jerusalem? By this very internet camera feed. P.S. The Palestinian Authority officially rejects the idea of installing security cameras at the Temple Mount. Gee, I wonder why that is. But I remember reading Revelation 11:9 when I was maybe 18 years old and couldn't understand how this prophecy could be possible. You have these two witnesses, Moses, and Elijah, witnessing on the streets of Jerusalem. And all nations and tongues will be watching them. I mean, you couldn't imagine how that could be possible when I was a young man. But, once cable television, satellite feeds, and the internet started coming in, it started making sense. But now, with cameras being installed at the Temple Mount, I mean, that really nails it. Anyway, from the Jerusalem Post, German Jews are concerned over the potential for a rise in anti-Semitism due to, quote, widespread anti-Semitism among Muslim youths who have made their way to Germany, close quote. According to a security document, Germany is, quote, importing Islamic extremism, Arab anti-Semitism, national and ethnic conflicts of other peoples, as well as a different societal and legal understanding, close quote. And security sources warn that, quote, the integration of hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants in Germany is no longer possible in light of the number already existing parallel societies, close quote. Now, the term parallel societies is frequently defined as insulated Muslim communities that have little or no contact with mainstream society. Note, in the current century, all murders of Jews in Europe, because they are Jews, be they in the Paris area, Toulouse, Brussels, or Copenhagen, have been committed by Muslims. Turning to wars and rumors of wars, on Tuesday, October 27th, Israel's Air Force struck 2 Hamas targets in southern Gaza a few hours after a rocket attack on southern Israel. A rocket exploded in an open area of the Gaza border region in the south earlier on Monday evening. Then on Wednesday, October 28th, from the Jerusalem Post, Russian airstrikes in southern Syria represent a rise in the potential for inadvertent friction with Israel. International media reported that the Russian Air Force carried out strikes in Syria's southern Daraa province near the Jordanian border on Wednesday. This is the closest that Russian jets have come to the Israeli border. Further, when Prime Minister Netanyahu met with President Putin in Moscow a few weeks ago, they set up a coordination mechanism to avoid military clashes between their forces. But, in practice, this mechanism doesn't even exist. Senior sources say that Russia updates Israel after the fact or provides worthless information, as was the case with the most recent Russian attacks on the Golan Heights in Syria. And on Thursday, October 29th, at least 40 people were killed and some 100 were wounded when Syrian government forces fired 12 missiles into a marketplace in Douma, 15 kilometers northeast of Damascus. On Friday, October 30th, a new coalition of armed opposition groups in northeastern Syria has launched an offensive against ISIS in the province of Hasaka as part of its desire to eradicate the group from the entirety of Syria. The Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, launched an attack against the ISIS stronghold in Hasaka on Friday night. Now turning to our Intifada update. On Tuesday, October 27th, from the Jerusalem Post, following 3 weeks of heightened security, including roadblocks at violent Arab neighborhoods, an extra 1,200 border police officers, and coordination with the IDF and Israel Security Agency, Israel police spokesman Mickey Rosenfeld said on Monday that the emergency security plan has prevented additional terrorist attacks from taking place in Jerusalem for the past week. However, the frequency of attacks over the last week against IDF soldiers in the West Bank has increased. An Israeli soldier was stabbed and his 2 assailants were killed on Tuesday evening after soldiers stopped 2 Palestinians acting suspiciously at the Gush Etzion junction in the West Bank. And later, in a separate incident, soldiers killed a Palestinian assailant who pulled a knife on them at a checkpoint near the Tel Rumeida neighborhood of Hebron. Israeli security forces arrested 2 wanted terrorist operatives in the Jenin refugee camp on suspicion of planning attacks on the army. A 24-year-old Hamas operative carried out shooting attacks on the IDF and manufactured and planted explosives as well. Security forces seized an M16 assault rifle, ammunition clips, a handgun, a stun grenade, night vision goggles, and military vests. Then, in a separate raid in Talat, southeast of Qalqilia, the IDF seized an M16, a handgun, hunting rifles, knives, and ammunition. Then on Wednesday, October 28th, from the Jerusalem Post, a Palestinian stabbed an Israeli mother of 8 in the back, just outside the parking lot of the Rami Levy supermarket at the Gush Etzion junction in the West Bank. That was on Wednesday afternoon. Security forces arrested the terrorist, and the store is considered an oasis of coexistence where both Palestinians and Israelis shop and work. Then on Thursday, October 29th, from Ynet News, an Israeli soldier was stabbed in the face in Hebron on Thursday morning. A border policeman shot and killed the Palestinian assailant. On Friday, October 30th, from the Jerusalem Post, an Arab with a drawn knife charged at pedestrians who stood by a light rail train station near Ammunition Hill in Jerusalem. He stabbed a 22-year-old American student in the chest and then tried to stab another student before being shot and killed by police and security guards. Meanwhile, in the crossfire, an Israeli man was struck in the leg. Then, in the West Bank, 2 Palestinian assailants drove to the Tapua Junction checkpoint on a scooter, drew knives, and stabbed a border police officer in the hand. Border police killed one assailant and seriously wounded the other. From Ynet News, a female border police fighter foiled a terrorist attack when 2 terrorists attempted to stab a fellow border policeman at the Tapua Junction. When she realized that 2 men had knives and were approaching her partner, she shot them. And she told reporters, quote, "I understood that if I hesitated for a second, the fighter beside me won't be alive anymore. I did my part. This is what I came to Israel for, to protect the country." She immigrated to Israel from France. Then on Saturday, October 31st, a Palestinian terrorist who attempted to stab Israeli security personnel at the Gilboa crossing north of Jenin was shot and killed. The head of the crossing's authority told reporters that the guard followed procedures exactly as he was trained to do. On Sunday, November 1st, from Haaretz, 3 Israeli border police officers were wounded in a car ramming attack north of Kiryat Arba in the West Bank. And earlier on Sunday, a knife-wielding Palestinian was shot dead by Israeli forces near the Palestinian village of Beit Anun after he tried to stab a soldier. And on Monday, November 2nd, from the Jerusalem Post, 2 terrorists attempted to stab a soldier Monday morning in the West Bank near the Gilboa crossing on the Palestinian side. 1 terrorist was shot and injured, and the other was arrested. So, to recap, the prophecy of Isaiah 17 seems to be forming in some very strong ways. President Obama is moving U.S. troops closer to the front lines in Iraq and Syria, Iran is also increasing its military presence in Syria. Some 2,000 to 3,000 Iranians and other combatants from Iran and Iraq are fighting in Syria on behalf of the Assad regime, while a surge in casualties is driving Hezbollah to question its role in Syria, and Russia is helping Iran deliver weapons into Syria. Then, the prophecy of Psalm 83 seems to be forming in some very strong ways as well. Between the Intifada, knife, rocks, and vehicular attacks, and the Palestinian preachers speaking at the Al-Aqsa mosques saying, "Oh Allah, annihilate the Jews. Oh Allah, let us kill them. Oh Allah, make the ground swallow them up along with their homes. Oh Allah, bring the whip of torment cracking down upon them." And the prophecy of Revelation 11:9 is also showing itself on the world stage through this week's announcement of new surveillance cameras that will be installed at the Temple Mount in Jerusalem this week. Last week, Israel's Air Force struck 2 Hamas targets in southern Gaza a few hours after a rocket attack on southern Israel. The Russian Air Force carried out strikes in Syria's southern Daraa province, the closest they've ever approached the Israeli border. At least 40 people were killed and some 100 were wounded when Syrian government forces fired 12 missiles 15 kilometers northeast of Damascus, and a new coalition of armed opposition groups in northeastern Syria, as well as the Syrian Democratic Forces, launched attacks against ISIS. The frequency of attacks against IDF soldiers in the West Bank has increased. An Israeli soldier was stabbed and his 2 assailants were killed. IDF soldiers killed a Palestinian assailant who pulled a knife on them. Israeli security forces arrested 2 wanted terrorist operatives. A 24-year-old Hamas operative carried out shooting attacks on the IDF and manufactured and planted explosives. In another event, security forces seized an M16 assault rifle, ammunition clips, a handgun, a stun grenade, night vision goggles, and military vests. In yet another event, the IDF seized an M16, a handgun, hunting rifles, knives, and ammunition. A Palestinian stabbed an Israeli mother of 8 in the back. An Israeli soldier was stabbed in the face. An Arab with a drawn knife charged at pedestrians who stood by a light rail train station and stabbed a 22-year-old American student in the chest, and then tried to stab another student before being shot and killed. 2 Palestinians drew knives and stabbed a border police officer in the hand. A female border police fighter foiled a terrorist attack when 2 terrorists attempted to stab her fellow border policeman. 3 Israeli border police officers were wounded in a car ramming attack. A knife-wielding Palestinian was shot dead by Israeli forces after he tried to stab a soldier. And 2 terrorists attempted to stab a soldier. 1 was shot and injured, and the other was arrested. And that, my friends, is what the LameStream Media is not telling you. Abba willing, I'll see you here again next week. Until then, stay safe. Shalom.
Crowded rooms, I need more space than I consume. Enough is time alone with you, underneath the naked moon, sharing confidential moods and making chatter. Mockingbird nocturnal sings notations of eternal things, entering the the quantum breeze, flying not for want of wings. He lights his gaze on you and me, simply because we matter.